What we see here is a manifestation of what in the New Testament is called the principalities and powers.
Tonight, Anglican priests show their support for the indigenous anti-pipeline movement.
We're here to win the biggest bag of wheat on the hill contest again this year.
And it's 420, the annual Smoke 'em If You Got 'em protest for the legalization of marijuana. Good evening, I'm Beverly Andrews. People continue to protest against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion at Kinder Morgan's Westridge dock in Burnaby, BC, and there have been 2 arrests. One of those arrests may come as a bit of a surprise. As APTN's Tina House reports, some might say the call to action is now coming from a higher power.
You're fully aware of all the legal jeopardy that you're in right now.
I'm more concerned about the state of the earth.
That's fair enough. I have to place you under arrest right now, so you're actually...
Anglican priest Emily Smith is now lending her voice to the movement against the Trans Mountain expansion project, and today she was willing to get arrested to prove her point.
We stand with the First Nations people who have been so harmed by colonialism, and by the church and by the state. It's time for us to stand and to say no more. No more violent degradation of the earth. Time to say yes to reconciliation, true reconciliation.
Emily is not the only faith leader here. Ron Barazan is also an Anglican priest from Powell River. He was asked by the Tsleil-Waututh Nation to come today.
I'm here today to add my voice in a small way that I can in support of my indigenous brothers and sisters, and in support of all creatures in the sea and on land who have no voice and who've been marginalized in this pipeline discussion.
National Indigenous Anglican Bishop Mark MacDonald says that what is happening here is outlined in the Holy Bible.
What we see here is a manifestation of what in the New Testament is called the principalities and powers, the way we would maybe call it systemic evil, the way in which certain ideas can beguile people in their thoughts and their thinking, and then hide the suffering and injustice of other people.
Father Barazan wanted to say a prayer during another arrest.
I give thanks to the Creator for this day, for the beautiful actions that folks have taken together to stand for life, to stand for water, to stand in defense of creation, and to stand in solidarity with the first peoples of this land. I give thanks for the earth that we walk on, for the air that we breathe, for the water that we drink and the water that is in our bodies. And I pray that we will always have these gifts and that we will remember to care dearly for what the Creator has given us.
Tina House, APTN National News, Burnaby.
It's that time of year again when the biggest pot-smoking party happens across the globe. APTN's Annette Francis has this story from the nation's capital.
It's a little early for 420 to begin, but already over 200 cannabis users and advocates have picked their spot. Many with a joint or bong in hand sit on the lawn of Parliament. It's the second time here for 18-year-old Kalapik Tulagut from Iqaluit. She looks forward to the party.
The only bad thing about it is munchies.
It's an annual event for organizer Alex Newcomb. This year's celebration comes just a few months before Bill C-45, or the Cannabis Act, is expected to become law. He's not happy with the proposed legislation.
We're asking for a free, fair, and open market for all Canadians. I mean, realistically, there's no reason it should be restricted any more than tomatoes at the end of the day. It's harmless, it's helpful, it's consumed in raw form, it's non-psychoactive, so I mean, it's really a harmless plant.
For over 20 years, 420 events have taken place in Ottawa. It's a day to celebrate marijuana and to call for legalization. 66-year-old Ray Termo says for him, 420 continues to be a mix of celebration and protest.
It's sort of a combination of both. I'm here to win the biggest bag of weed on the hill contest again this year.
Some dress up for the occasion, others bring signs. But 27-year-old Nathan Kirby is just happy to light one up without worry. That's why he joined in protest.
I love doing this, and them arresting us for this, I find is a little stupid. Big quantities, sure, why not? Because now you're really pushing the limits. But at a certain amount, it's almost laughable when they arrest somebody.
As 420 comes to an end, and as Bill C-45 winds its way through the legislation process, many here are hoping they won't have to come back next year. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Northwest Territories is still in the midst of public consultations on cannabis. But what about dry communities? Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs sat down with one elder and former MLA and got his thoughts on pot.
Norman Yakalaya is blunt about his thoughts on cannabis. That's because the legalization of the leafy green is just a season away. And for Norm, he doesn't believe the Northwest Territories is ready. The former MLA of the Sawtooth region has been researching the health and legal implications of cannabis for months. He is from the dry community of Toledo. And he doesn't think weed belongs in a community that bans booze.
The effects of short-term use.
The Northwest Territories decided that with the legalization of marijuana coming up, dry communities should be able to decide if they want to allow weed or not. Toledo and 5 other communities that restrict alcohol will have the chance to hold a plebiscite to prohibit cannabis.
Some people
but
are
it's a
for
burning
it.
issue.
Some people are totally against it. Some people are talking with not the most accurate, up-to-date evidence base on marijuana. Some people swear by it, and some think it's the evils of the devil that's coming in. And the fact is that it's being used in our small communities. So let's get the best information to our people.
In the NWT, cannabis will be sold through the Territory's liquor stores and government mail orders for communities without liquor stores. As legalization becomes nearer, Yakalaya wants the Northwest Territories government to roll out up-to-date information about risks associated with marijuana.
And what they're finding out is in California, that a lot of young people are ending up in an emergency hospital because for the cardio. They're eating the marijuana, and it takes slower to have an effect as inhaling. And so they take little gummy bears or cute little candies and eat them. They don't feel nothing, and so they take more. They feel nothing, they take more. Pretty soon, 20 minutes later, bang.
The government has done studies and surveys on pot. They also held public meetings in 9 communities to gain opinions and try to explain the proposed legislation. But Yakalaya says the 61-page document outlining the legislation was way too complicated for residents to understand.
It's a 61-page document. It's legally written in legalistic terms. Who can interpret the legalistic terms of what they mean?
Dry communities like Toledo will have the option to hold a vote on whether or not they want cannabis in the community. But Norman Yakalaya hopes before that happens, the government will give people in communities all the information they need about pot. Or else, he worries those communities could go up in smoke. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
The city of Yellowknife has tried various ways to help homeless people in their city. One group is taking to the streets to keep everyone safe. Here's Charlotte Moore-Jacobs once again with this story.
In downtown Yellowknife, it is hard to miss the large white van creeping through the back alleys. Everyday homelessness advocate Lydia Bardak and her team patrol the streets for intoxicated and vulnerable persons.
I'm looking for anyone who might flag us down, and I'm looking for anyone who might be staggering or sitting or laying on the ground. Because even though it's wet and cold, we have found a couple of sleepers today.
Since its launch last July, Street Outreach, overseen by the Yellowknife Women's Society, has answered thousands of phone calls. Those in need or residents who see someone who is intoxicated call Lydia's team to pick them up.
We started out with an unmarked white van, and if you take a look behind you, it's the old RCMP paddy wagon. It's not built for comfort. So one of the first ladies we approached, she was sitting on steps outside a building. We said, we knew where she stayed. Do you want to ride? And she said yes. We opened the doors and she panicked.
The City of Yellowknife is providing $360,000 to help the program, which runs between 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. daily.
Okay?
Yeah. Bardak makes her way to a call of a client who is a regular. She answers calls like this often, with the majority of those in need being elders. Many of the clients are being taken to the city's new sobering center at the Salvation Army or the day shelter. Bardak says it has had a significant impact on the number of calls RCMP receive.
For the past 2 months, they have reported a 30% reduction in people in the drunk tank.
The team of 8 workers have become like a family to the clients, and they have learned how to be gentle but firm in getting people to safe spaces.
We get to know people, so there are some people we know that, you know what, there's still a small crowd here and they're quite reluctant to take a ride. Maybe they still have something to drink and they're not finished for the night. So we'll just come back and check on you later, and sometimes it takes 1 or 2, returns to say, are you ready now?
Homelessness is an ongoing issue for Yellowknife. The city will hold a homelessness count this weekend. But according to Bardak, that type of survey is just a snapshot of one day, and more work could be done year-round.
One thing we don't do in Yellowknife is we don't count the people turned away from shelters. So if somebody wanted to do a good count, they could post themselves outside the shelters to see who doesn't actually get in, because that's a critical piece of information that we need.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
After the break, the Dean of Lakehead University in Thunder Bay has resigned. We'll discuss why. But first, let's take a look at tomorrow's weather outlook. Cloudy on the east coast, +5 in Fredericton, +2 in Charlottetown. Happy Valley Goose Bay is at 0 with cloud. Kuujjuaq is sunny and -3. Cloudy in Sept-Îles and +4, sun and +9 in Montreal. Sunny in Ottawa and Toronto and +10. More sun in Kapuskasing and Timmins and +12. Thompson is sunny at +11, cloudy and +9 in the Pas. Some cloud and +15 in Dauphin and Winnipeg. Cloud cover at +16 in Regina, +14 with more cloud in Estevan. Uranium City is cloudy and at +8, Meadow Lake also cloudy, +12. Lakehead University is under fire after the dean of its law school announced her resignation. Angelique Eaglewoman was the first Indigenous woman to serve as dean of a law school in Canada. Willow Fiddler joins me now to tell us more. Willow, can you tell us why Angelique Eaglewoman is resigning?
Yeah, Beverly, she announced her resignation in a letter to the Aboriginal Advisory Committee last month. In that letter, she stated, I have been the victim of systemic discrimination at Lakehead University because I am Indigenous and a woman. She goes on to state in the letter that her authority as dean had been undermined and minimized, and her efforts to implement the law school's Indigenous mandate was not supported by the university.
And this is a fairly new law school. How significant is this for Indigenous people there?
So the law school is fairly new. It opened in 2013, and Angelique Eaglewoman joined as dean in 2016. I talked with Dean Eaglewoman and a few others about what was happening, about her resignation, and a couple of things that I've heard. One, this law school would not exist without its Indigenous mandate. I spoke with Associate Professor Dennis McPherson, who's been a faculty member in the Department of Indigenous Learning at Lakehead University for more than 25 years now. He was on the planning committee for the law school and says that the Indigenous mandate was the selling point. The Indigenous mandate being that the law school would have the unique focus of things like First Nations legal issues in this part of the province and small town legal practices. The second thing that I've heard is the Indigenous mandate is not being fulfilled or met by Lakehead University. And in order for that to happen, Eagle Woman has said that the university needs to be more open-minded and open-hearted in terms of valuing Indigenous scholars like herself who have the education and carry the knowledge needed to implement the Indigenous mandate. So that means having Indigenous people at all levels, including faculty to teach Indigenous curriculum, and in roles like the Dean to ensure the Indigenous mandate is in fact being carried out.
And so what's happening now in response to the Dean's resignation, and when does it take effect?
So the Aboriginal Advisory Committee of the law school has met a couple of times now since she announced her resignation. One committee member I spoke to, Selena Reitberger, called what's happening to Dean Eagle Woman a horrible story of abuse. The committee will be holding a press conference next Tuesday morning on Fort William First Nation when they will call on the university to address the systemic issues that have been identified and cited in Eagle Woman's resignation letter. The committee said that they don't accept her resignation and have asked her to rescind her resignation, but they will also respect and support her decision. The Dean goes on stress leave May 1st, and her resignation takes effect in June. No response from Lakehead University at this point, except to say that this is all a personnel matter.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to explain this issue to us, and I'm sure we'll hear some follow-ups next week.
Thanks, Beverly.
Singers from Medicine Tail Drum Group recently collaborated with the Chicago Children's Choir. Their performance caught the attention of thousands on social media and has seen an outpouring of positive feedback. To tell us more about the song and performance, I'm joined by Alex Alvarez, one of the founders of Medicine Tail. So Alex, can you tell me how this collaboration with the choir came together?
Sure. My friend Dom, his sister, does some work with the Chicago Children's Choir, and during their World Music Festival, they try to study and celebrate the diversity of the world cultures. And so they had some really hard times getting some Indigenous music represented, and so we just lucked out that we kind of were available to do it, and we put together a pretty good performance from that.
And can you tell us a little bit about the song? What was the inspiration for the one that you sang with the choir?
Sure. That song was actually one that I composed about 10 years ago. I was teaching a tribal pre-K class for our traditional language as well as cultural activities. And singing was just a great way to get the kids warmed up to the lesson. And so I bring my hand drum in there, and that's what we always started with. And they just loved it. And it's funny, I didn't even think of that song until on the way over to the rehearsal and the workshop that Saturday morning before the performance. So it just came to me as being a great fit for that organization.
And how did it feel performing with the kids choir?
It was amazing. I'm still kind of vibing from the positivity of it. The Chicago Children's Choir is about 5,000 singers, and we worked with their top 2 high school age choirs, which is about 150 students. And I remember we sang the song by ourselves about 3 times through, and you could just already see them like tapping their leg with the round dance beat and kind of humming along. And so we went over it a couple times slow. And the very first time, I'm not musically educated, so I couldn't really tell them about what kind of chords or notes or pitch to hit. So just imitate us or mimic us, and told them just to add in some harmony. And whenever they hit that first note while we were singing, it sent chill bumps up my whole entire body and almost dropped my hand drum.
And what was it like to hear these kids singing your song?
It's still just so unreal to me. I mean, I didn't really have time to process until that Sunday, and I watched the video on Facebook, and I was like, wow. I was like, this is how things make a positive change. This is how people's lives can, you want to make them better. And we know that music connects us, but to have those kids not only learning the lyrics and the song, but also the deeper appreciation for Native American music was unreal. Or I should say indigenous, because it's not just our tribes here in the States, for sure.
Well, thanks for talking to us, Alex. We look forward to hearing more from you in the future, and good luck on your future collaborations.
Thank you all so much for the opportunity. Bro.
Up next, a preview of next week's Nation to Nation with Todd Lamaran, and then a look at the rest of tomorrow's weather outlook. See you after the break.
Nation to Nation is packing up and leaving the nation's capital for the West Coast. We'll be coming to you from ground zero of the Kinder Morgan pipeline dispute in British Columbia. So watch out for that special edition of Nation to Nation, immediately following APTN National News this coming Thursday.
Cloudy in Fort Chipewyan and +9. Peace River also cloudy, +7. More cloud in southern Alberta, +7 in Red Deer, +12 in Calgary. Victoria and Penticton is coming in at +11 and cloudy. More cloud in Smithers and +7. Also cloudy in Sandspit and +9. +5 and cloudy in Whitehorse and Watson Lake. Some sun in Yellowknife at -2. Also sunny in Ray Lakes and -5. Some cloud cover in Colville Lakes and -13, sunny and -17 in Inuvik. A chilly -21 but sunny in Cambridge Bay, sunny and +3 in Arviat. Snow expected in Igloolik and -4, cloud cover and -8 in Pangerton. Hollywood film and mainstream television often falls back to stereotypes of Indigenous people. In the early days, they would use actors in red face, but even today, actors and celebrities get called out for faking it. Some say it's getting better, but others say in the industry can do more. On tonight's APTN Investigates, Cowboys and Pretendants, John Murray explores Indigenous representation in TV and film. So, John, can you tell us what are pretendians?
Well, there's really two kinds of pretendians. There's the Hollywood Indian, which is essentially something that's happened in the history where there's somebody wearing red face, basically. But then there's also a real-life pretendian, like Grey Owl. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was a person that is in national parks here, and he basically became a cultural treasure for Canada. But he wasn't actually Indigenous. And another person is Iron Eyes Cody, who was actually an Italian person. And again, he lived his life as a Native American.
So why is this still an issue? I thought it only happened in Old Westerns.
Well, it's still happening in Westerns. Fairly recently, 2 years ago, there was The Ridiculous Six, an Adam Sandler production, and actors walked off the set there over concerns about red face. And then there was The Lone Ranger, not even 4 or 5 years ago.
And who did you speak to for this episode?
Oh, I spoke to some really incredible film veterans. I spoke with Jesse Wente, Jennifer Podemski, Tantu Cardinal, and Jeff Barnaby. And then also I talked to some up-and-coming young filmmakers, Charlene Moore, Ryan Wilson, Justina Neepin, and Ollie King. And they just recently graduated from the National Screen Institute, and they're up-and-coming young Indigenous filmmakers, and they really offered a lot of insight to this episode.
Well, great, John. Thanks for talking to us and giving us a little bit of insight on your episode coming up.
All right. Thanks, Beverly.
And that is your APTN National Newscast for this Friday. Please stay tuned for Cowboys and Pretend Indians, airing right after this cast. I'm Beverly Andrews. Have a great weekend.